What do you do when your golf clubs are suddenly missing?
That's the position John Laws found himself in when his clubs disappeared from the back of his car. When he got on Facebook to vent about it, his sister replied,
"Make sure to check Craigslist. It's happened to my friends numerous times, and they usually got their stuff back."
And lo and behold, there they were, laid out on a sand-trapped colored carpet. At first, he thought maybe he'd confront the thieves himself, but then figured
they had no problem robbing your car. Who's to say they won't do the same thing right to your face?
So he called TPD instead.
We arranged a meeting with the person posting it.
But just because they recovered the clubs didn't mean John had proved they were his. Which leads us to a familiar refrain cops often give when it comes to identifying your property.
Mark it somehow, some way to where you can say, I know there's a mark in this specific place and that nobody else would really know about.
I didn't put any specific markings on them deliberately.
Or did he? See, John isn't the best golfer in the world. And sometimes
One of my drives that don't go the right way,
he goes a little crazy.
And there it was, like the perfect drive down the fairway. Exhibit A.
right there.
The
That's
dent.
me, of all people,
A mark of frustration that led to salvation.
Whether it's an accidental marking, whatever, anything that helps us say, yes, that makes sense, that's yours.
Quiet, please.
For John Laws, I'm Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8.
Okay.
She was moving as fast as she could with flip-flops and a toddler in her arms.
All the phones are down.
Jacqueline Russell, trying not to panic as she approached what was left of the elementary school that her two young children attend. In the parking lot, shell-shocked kids being carried by teachers, holding T-shirts on head wounds, and being treated right on the spot.
There's kids that want their mother and their father, and I can't console them in that.
The sights surrounding them didn't offer any comfort. The only thing to indicate that this was once a school, the battered playground equipment. That this was in fact their hometown, the water tower in the distance. Across the street, neighbors digging through the rubble of what was the house of Paula and Jerry Mars. Was there a chance they might not have been home?
That's their blue car right there. It's the only one they have. And this is his wallet. So he's here.
As the search for the Mars continued, Jacqueline found one of her children, her daughter Reminiscence.
She's right under me the whole time. She just really did good. Yes, she did great. She did great.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the school,
I'm looking for my little niece.
How old is she?
She's 9.
Martha, looking for Karina and overcome with a silent awe at the magnitude of the devastation. The area she's looking at is where rescue workers would be focusing for the next several hours, eventually roping the location off around twisted beams and splintered trees. Fortunately for Jacqueline, her nightmare would end with the discovery of her other child, relatively unharmed.
He told me to put my hands on my head, and then the storm came, and then it tumbled on me. But I didn't get hurt that much.
A momentary sigh of relief in a landscape of oblivion.
I'm just worried about the kids that are still in there.
Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8. In football lingo, you'd call it a reverse, because that sums up Robert Scholar's attitude towards the sport he once loved.
It was almost a decade before I actually came back and went to a game.
It was about a decade ago that his son Kyle was getting ready to go off to war.
The night before, he's in his bedroom packing up all of his belongings to go, and I'm watching a football game.
A few months later, Kyle was killed in Iraq after a roadside bomb detonated near his Humvee.
Lord Jesus, these folks are burdened with a grief that will not cease.
That eulogy was spot on, because that grief came with a dose of guilt that wouldn't go away.
So it was hard knowing that I'd kind of blew the last night that I had to spend with him watching a football game.
When he finally did start going to games again, it was probably a little strange. But he couldn't have imagined how strange things would get when he simply tried to find something to drink.
We were getting ready to enter the stadium, and we were looking for bottled water.
He found a tailgate with a nice lady who was raising money for the Student Veterans Association. And when he told her about his son,
she just said, "Will you hold on a minute? I've got somebody I want you to meet, my husband."
My wife's yelling at me, "Get over here, I have someone for you to meet."
Gabe Savegny had never met Robert, but he knew who he was instantly.
They had the same eyes, so I could definitely tell first I knew exactly who it was.
The last time he had seen those eyes was serving with Kyle in Iraq.
He was always happy to, always lifting people up, and his picture is hanging on my wall still in my living room, and my kids will know who he was.
What are the odds that they'd meet in a sea of 82,000 people? What are the odds that he'd have a dog tag tattoo on his arm with Kyle's name in it to honor him? What are the odds that Gabe and Robert would both be suffering from the same thing?
That's where my guilt comes in, is the morning of it, I was supposed to be in the middle convoy, or the middle vehicle.
Kyle was normally in the lead vehicle, but on that day, Gabe and Kyle had switched, and Kyle was where Gabe would have normally been sitting when that bomb went off.
Because that could have been me. And I don't live with that guilt anymore that it should have been. I am thankful for the opportunity that I have.
From Robert's end, his guilt has gotten better too.
It's been 10 years.
A feat of healing that you can't help but think Kyle had something to do with.
The last couple of days, I kind of felt like, hearing Gabe's story and kind of some of the guilt that he had and some of the guilt that I had, that maybe Kyle had brought us together. I don't know,
In football lingo, you'd call that a Hail Mary. Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8.
Coming westbound on Pine.
The basics of this story are shocking enough to begin with.
All of a sudden I heard this loud pop.
Scott Burton, driving along yesterday, minding his own business, when his arm suddenly starts bleeding after that loud pop.
I knew I was hurt. I didn't know it was a gunshot.
Straight through his windshield, immediately creating a welt in his forearm.
The welt that I saw instantly was actually where the bullet had stopped and was just this lump against my flesh.
Under arrest, 3 teens who police say had skipped classes at McLean and had set up a sniper's nest on the roof of a building.
It's kind of mixed feelings.
Now, this is where the story gets even more shocking, when Scott reveals what kind of punishment he thinks those kids should get.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure that punishment is the ideal.
Yeah, you heard that right. Scott is actually worried about the futures of the kids who could have easily killed him.
Because you do one truly foolish thing in your life, when you're so young, it's not what you want to say is the end of your world. You're gone. It's done. You've screwed everything up.
Yes, he wants them held accountable, but more importantly, he wants them to get help.
What brought you to this point, and how do we improve what caused this?
Call it turning the other cheek. Call it extreme empathy. Call it an extraordinary act of placing yourself in the shoes of someone who shot you.
I'll admit, I wasn't the best kid. I mean...
Did you ever shoot at anybody?
No, I did not.
Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8.
Well, you have a good day. We'll see you later.
QT is a place where the phrase pit stop comes to mind. Get some gas, grab a donut, maybe a dog. But sometime during the darkness of the wee hours of the morning,
Appalled, really? Like, how do you do this?
Someone took the phrase pit stop.
I don't know what would be going through their head. Drugs, maybe?
And twisted it into cruelty.
A live animal in a trash can.
Officially, she doesn't have a name yet.
My first thought was QT.
A roughly 10-week-old pit bull, discovered by an employee emptying one trash can into another.
Stopped himself because he heard the whining from the puppy.
There's no telling how long it was in the trash bag.
Mired in filth, the freezing fur ball was rescued from the refuse.
He had that dog right up here, just covered in trash juice.
So there was frost on the tips of its fur right here and coming down the ear.
Rich Hanks, a customer who never thought his pit stop would turn literal when he saw the discovery.
Come on, baby. Come on, girl.
His outrage prompted him to take the dog right then and there.
I would like to know who they were so I could put them in a trash can for the night in the freezing cold and see how they like it.
It's an act that spurs anger and disbelief at what someone could have possibly been thinking.
It was like, hey, let's take it to the nearest Quick Trip, put it in the trash can. Like, man, I'm pretty sure we have pounds for that.
Speaking of which, Gene Letcher actually uttering the following phrase for people out there who amazingly don't know better.
Animals are not disposable. They're living beings.
And they can be dropped off for free at the shelter and at least given half a chance.
Possibly they can be adopted out to a family, or if not, then humanely euthanized and not thrown in the trash, suffering from the cold.
Meanwhile, back at QT, a wobbly puppy is lucky to be alive, and Rich got more than he bargained for.
I just stopped for a donut and it came out with a pit bull.
Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8. It's one thing to look at the damage a tornado can cause after the fact. It's another thing altogether to watch it happen 50 feet away.
It was probably the scariest thing I've ever been through.
Alan Black, along with 6 other people and 4 dogs, packed themselves into this shelter and witnessed fury.
When the tornado hit, the door flew open and we actually saw my brother-in-law's house fly off the foundation.
We saw it go over us.
Gina and her husband had also raced down to that same shelter.
All I could do was pick up my dogs and go. It was scary. It was very scary.
But they weren't able to take all of their pets. Shelters, after all, are small. And left behind out back in his now destroyed pen was their pet pig, Frosty.
I've had him since he's 6 weeks old.
It can be hard to find anything left in the wake of a tornado, with everything jumbled and piled and buried. But fortunately, Frosty kind of stands out.
Pigs are tough, and they're smart too. That helps.
At 500 pounds, he's well known in these parts, and now he's a bit of a legend.
Yeah, he walks on a leash, but yeah, he was up on the roof.
Evidently, he was thrown down. He was limping on his back left leg when I got him last night.
It can be tough to find the silver lining in a disaster, but apparently there's nothing tougher than a quarter-ton pig named Frosty.
We need a little laughter sometimes, I think.
Frosty, I'm glad you're all right. Burt Mummolo, Tulsa's Channel 8.